It's the Dylan Show. He's a real nigga and helps the homeless people. It's the Dylan Show.
Welcome to the Dylan Show, everybody. Today we're with a very special guest, Mike Pollock, the beloved voice actor for many of our childhood favorite characters. So, Mike, how are we feeling today?
Well, so far so good. Actually, the day is pretty much ending at this hour, so it's been a great day. Let's hope it continues for the next several hours.
All right, awesome to hear. Awesome to hear. So, for my first question, how did you get into voice acting, and how has it shaped your life from that point?
As a kid, I loved radio and I loved theater. When it came time to pick a career, I started with radio because radio seemed to be almost as unstable as a career in theater, with jobs coming and going, but radio seemed a little more stable. After several a decade and a half or so, radio proved otherwise, and it kicked me to the curb for the last time. And I was able to fall back on the community theater experience and the various amateur dramatic experience and voicing characters and stuff in radio commercials. Put together a demo tape and sent that around, and animation studios liked it, and commercial producers liked it, and that allowed me to transition from radio into voiceover full time. And after just over 25 years of doing this mostly full time, I've not looked back.
That's awesome to hear, and I'm glad you found your passion in life. I know many people kind of struggle throughout life trying to find what they want to do, and it's awesome to hear that, like, you could find something that you really like to do.
Thank
So,
you. Love it.
uh, all right, back to you, Kevin.
Thank you. So, my question for you, Mr. Pollock, who do you think is the best Eggman voice actor? Is it you, Jim Cummings, Jim Carrey, or Long John Barely?
Well, it's not my place to judge. First of all, I don't do the hiring, but whoever does the hiring picked people they've liked, and they've picked me currently. But that's really for the audience to decide. We're here to entertain, and I'm not going to pick favorites among colleagues. But if you've got a favorite, feel free to have a favorite.
Well said, well said.
Thank you.
All right, so for my next question, so what's the backstory to how you got the role of Dr. Eggman in the beloved Sonic the Hedgehog franchise? Like, could you take us back to where it all began?
Sure. I guess we can take it back to one of my first demo tape submissions. The first demo tape went out and was for an anime called Demon Fighter Kocho with NYAB Post. I worked with them several times. The second tape I sent out, these were cassettes back in the day. That's how far back this was for an episode of Pokemon directed by Eric Stewart for 4Kids before the Fox Box and 4Kids TV became a thing. But 4Kids was still independently dubbing stuff like Pokemon. So we did walk on a Pokemon, and then they were in development with 4Kids TV and the Fox Box type stuff. So they were looking for casts for their upcoming dubs of things. And Eric is one of the directors for Yu-Gi-Oh, which was also being done in parallel on other networks, as well as producing some of the shows on 4Kids and the Fox Box. And so he brought me into audition for Yu-Gi-Oh, didn't book it, but he recommended me to the other directors and producers at 4Kids, and one of them was producing Kirby Right Back at Ya. And I auditioned and booked a recurring role on Kirby Right Back at Ya. And then shortly thereafter, as the network was being developed, they decided they needed somebody for their promo voice. And the promo department had me come in and read, and I became the voices of the promos for several years. And that led to all sorts of other networking opportunities within 4Kids TV. And ultimately, a couple years into our relationship, the producer of Kirby Right Back at Ya was assigned to produce Sonic X. And we had a super secret meeting one day of all the actors, which almost never happened. And they revealed at that meeting they have a special project coming up called Project X. Nobody knew what that was, but it was quickly revealed to be Sonic X a few weeks later. And the director and producer decided they were very interested in having me audition for Dr. Eggman. So they gave me some clips of Dean Bristow to work on a sound alike. And I went home and practiced my Dean Bristow. I'm Dean Bristow. Rah, 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 rah. And I went in and auditioned with my Dean Bristow voice. And the Sega people, I guess, were not fully convinced. So they brought me back in for a callback where I went back in and did my deep Bristol voice. And then the third time's the charm, the third visit, the second callback, they decided, yeah, you'll do. And they cast me as Dr. Eggman in Sonic X.
And that was about 20 years ago, if I'm not
Um,
mistaken.
our our sneak preview was August 23rd, 2003. So it's just been 21 years.
That's a long time. I mean, I grew up with you, just playing the games and stuff, so it's kind of surreal, just to be sitting here discussing, just this type of stuff with you. And uh, I guess I don't know. It's kind of surreal too because me and Kevin are both 20 years old, so I mean, it's really cool how you got to shape a lot of our childhoods and
Hmm.
that sort of thing. So I just want to give my special gratitude on behalf of me, Kevin, and the entire audience just for shaping our childhood.
Sure, pleasure. It's a pleasure growing up with you.
All right, Kevin, next question.
Right. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Um, for my next question for you, Mr. Pollock, um, how does someone go to voice acting? Like, how does it all started? Like what was like a like like how does it all start? Like, oh, this is like my dream job, or this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, how does it all really start?
Well, the key word in voice acting is the acting part. So if you want to be a voice actor, learn to act first. So get school theater experience, get community theater experience, learn to act on stage with people, because when you step into a voiceover booth, you're more than not going to be alone, just you and a director, or you and a director and an engineer. The other actors may have recorded before you or have recorded after you. And so you need to be able to approximate the reaction of the people you would be performing with if you were performing together. Sometimes we record as ensemble style, but very often we're recording separately. So we have to make sure the director at least has to make sure that we sound like we know what we're talking about and we're responding naturally to people who may or may not be there and already recorded. And then you just pursue it as any freelance actor. We actors are freelancers. We work for as long as we can with a project, as long as the project is going, and then the project ends, and we look for more work. The main difference with a voiceover is that you can work on several projects simultaneously very easily. If you're in a recurring series, it records a couple hours a week. So in between those couple of hours, you've got time to look for and work on other jobs.
Hmm. Well, that's very interesting. Very interesting, and I, as as someone that I really like wanted to like dabble on what's it called, voice acting, but I didn't
Hmm.
really know like there was like other ways, or just like a process, like you can say like what you just said, like you doing theater, because one, I never done theater, and like since you've been doing this for like 20 plus years, so I think that's very interesting. And back to you, Dylan.
Thank you. So, in your opinion, which one of your characters that you've had the honor of voicing deserves more love?
That's a great question. One of the earlier things we dubbed was Jungle Emperor Leo, which is kind of based on Kimba the White Lion, and some would say is the inspiration for the Lion King, but that's a discussion for another time. But in the English dub of that from about 20 years ago, I played Professor Mustache, who was exploring and came upon the family of lions that is central to the story. And there are quite a number of dramatic moments in that dub that most people don't realize is something in my wheelhouse, because they tend to associate me with comedy, but I am quite happy to do drama just as well as comedy. And there's a lot of drama and pathos, for lack of a better word, in Jungle Emperor Leo.
Mm. So you think that out of all, like, you think that one deserves a lot more love than it received initially?
Yeah, it's still kind of a deep dive in the catalog. So it's available. It's streaming somewhere. You just not a lot of people think to look for it.
Well, I'll definitely have to check that out after this interview.
Please.
Back to you, Kevin.
Thank you. um, for my next question for you, Mr. Pollock. Um, so you don't need to answer this, but I do have it written down. So how does it feel to get canceled on Twitter.com? Because I'm not sure you remember. I think this happened like I believe 4 months ago.
Hmm.
I think you tweeted something on Twitter and people weren't happy and they were claiming that you got hacked and you explained everything that what happened and why you said that. So how did it feel to get canceled on Twitter.com?
It was rather surprising to see so many people's hearts filled with hatred. Rather disillusioning. But that's people. You can't please everyone.
Hmm.
That's true. Did it like I guess surprise you? Because I think later on that day, I think you joined a Twitter space. I think that's what they're called, Twitter space, where you talk to people on Twitter,
Hmm.
and you're trying to explain yourself, like what happened and what you actually believe in. Since you mentioned that your dad was Jewish, your mom is Jewish, and you are Jewish, and that's what you believe in. But
Hmm.
the whole Twitter space was like in pure chaos. Like because I listened to it, like at one point someone was imitating a shadow and like it was just very hard to listen to. So like that Twitter space, how did that make you feel?
There's a long history of anti Semitism, and the world has hated Jews for thousands and thousands of years. And recently it's become fashionable to hate Jews. And I don't appreciate that, and will fight back against Jew hatred whenever possible, because I am proud to be a Jew. And if you know anything about Jews, there's not a lot of reason to hate them, except for your own prejudices, and you should probably get over that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I think anti-Semitism is like really bad, and I don't think you should hate anyone like who they are. And like I just found it surprised that you of all people got canceled because for sharing your beliefs and well who you are.
Well, I think we proved a point about who hates Jews and why, and it's not a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel as if there's more of a tolerance for this type of anti-Semitic behavior in recent society? Like, there's no like these parents aren't teaching their children that. What, like, do you feel like the rhetoric is twisted in a way compared to how it used to be? I mean, as little as like 5 years ago.
Social media has brought that into very sharp focus because Jews generally are outnumbered. There are millions of Jews and billions of non-Jews, and among those billions are many people who hate Jews because they have been taught to hate Jews. And a lot of the negative Jewish propaganda gets it goes viral a lot faster than the pro-Jewish propaganda. And people who already hate Jews have their views reinforced that it's cool to hate Jews because this propaganda says it is. No.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel as if we're almost moving backwards in a sense?
Yeah, it's a pretty challenging time to be Jewish. Um, Synagogues are ramping up their security because there are attacks on synagogues. When there are protests about the war in the Middle East, the pros and the cons fight with each other, and people get hurt. Not to mention the hostages who are dying far too quickly, being murdered by the folks who have taken them.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
The
Do
song I
you?
posted in the first place, that's all it was supporting, but apparently people would rather the hostages stay there to get killed. All right.
Yeah, I just I just find it like hard to I guess grasp that we can't agree to disagree. You know, like everyone has their own beliefs and whether they're catching on, but instead of like instead of like I guess not agreeing and like you not being like rude towards the your opinion or your beliefs, they just spreads more hate. But do you feel like um it's been I, I guess I guess I this past year or so? Do you feel like it's been more hatred than ever? Like as you said, like more propaganda, like more negativity in social media.
It's getting worse. It's been getting worse for the last 10 or 15 years, versus thanks to various political opinions. We've always been a tribal society, but lately, especially with social media and the opportunity for everyone to be in their own echo chamber and bubble and hearing the bias that confirms their own biases. It's the world of confirmation bias. We've become very tribal, and we basically are chanting to each other, "We hate the other team. We hate the other team." It's like a sports rivalry, but it's gone far beyond sports. But basically, we hate you, you hate us. It is Tom Lehrer saying, and everybody hates the Jews in National Brotherhood Week. Look it up. But yeah, it's social media makes it easy to hate. It's becoming anti-social media, and it's not helping anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Very well put. And I feel like in general, just social media, like the people who typically wouldn't like spew that like sort of hatred, like they wouldn't normally do it, but now that they have access to do it anonymously, like behind
Hmm.
a screen, it's more convenient, and that's unfortunate, but it's the reality we live in.
And one of the things about the online celebrities, of which I occasionally am one, we are not anonymous. We are ourselves. We go by our own names. So we are easy targets. Target is probably the wrong word in these circumstances, but in this case, and in the case of me, I'm an easy target, and there I was.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
I get you. And it's unfortunate, but you're a strong person. I can tell just by watching you over the years, like in a non in a non creepy way, but just you're very strong. You're very resilient. You're able to just kind of power through whatever challenges are brought your way and make it out. So I mean, I have to applaud you for that. But
Thank you. The
I
one thing I've learned is that unchangeable minds are unchangeable. So no matter what what positive propaganda I may spew, the people who feel otherwise deeply and don't want to possibly bend. And I guess the opposite is also true. But I've been Jewish all of my 59 years, so I am deeply entrenched in various aspects of the Jewish faith, and I know that Jews are pretty cool people in for the most part. So for those who are not Jewish, they feel otherwise. And it's a Jew thing. Unless you're a Jew, you don't get it. And I get that. But just saying that doesn't mean much because people don't want to know.
right, and I do a lot of my family on my mother's side like is comes from Jewish background. And I don't understand the hatred towards them. I mean, they're generally like pretty laid back. It's nothing too extreme compared to some of the other religions in the world. Not to get into that whole type of rabbit hole, but I mean, there's no reason to hate it. It's generally like there's nothing too different, even compared to just Christianity and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. It just seems asinine to hate on someone for what they believe in, especially when we're in such a society to where like we're supposed to respect everyone, and it just seems like it's
Sure,
kind of backwards. But I think
nobody's perfect, and there are plenty of reasons to hate just about anyone. But if your entire focus is hatred, it's not going to make friends.
very well put.
Mm-hmm.
So for my next question, what was the strangest character you've had the honor of voicing over the years?
Well, there was the one audition that I didn't book, so that's the next best answer to your question. I auditioned spur of the moment for a dying chicken. Didn't book it. Don't know if anyone booked it. Don't know if the project ever got made, but apparently my dying chicken was not dying chicken enough.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but apart from that, I guess the role that people love to mock, speaking of mocking and hatred, is Greg in Ratatouille. And I will make the same case for Greg and Ratatouille. It's not terrible. My job is to act and to entertain. And I love to work and I love to get cast in stuff. And my joy comes from performing, not from performing in things you think are good. So I was just as honored to have booked a role in Ratatouille as I am to book a role in anything.
Right.
An actor's default position is unemployment. And for the 2 hours that I was recording Greg and Ratatouille, I was not unemployed. And that was pretty cool.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever watch the movie back, like on Ratatouille?
Yep, I've watched it a couple times. It's not great, but my parts are good. I play four different characters in Ratatouille, and if you didn't know, you might not have noticed, but I am four distinct characters in Ratatouille, and at least my parts are entertaining. Some of my colleagues pretty entertaining as well.
Right, and I think when I was researching kind of your background, your career, I was privileged enough to see some of the work, and I don't know, it's just you can't hate on it. It's a lot of people put their time and soul into these projects, and you got to at least respect the hustle, you know.
Sure, one thing I love to say, well, I love to say a lot of things, but my versatility is highly underrated. I love to be in stuff. I've done a bunch of commercials the past couple of weeks, and a lot of people look down at commercials. No, he's too good to be in commercials. He should be doing commercials. Dude, commercials, while you may skip past them when you're watching and listening to things, they serve a purpose. They try to sell product. They keep the wheels of commerce moving, and someone's got to produce them. Someone's got to be in them. And these days, when AI is a threat to the actor's very existence, I am honored that directors and producers still seek out human actors to be in their cartoons and their commercials specifically. And the commercials and stuff I've done may not be on the top tier entertainment value if all you're looking for is fictional cartoons, but I love them. I will listen back and watch back to the commercials that I've done and say, I did a good job. The director was happy with me and let me leave and sent me a check. Mission accomplished. So the
Mm,
joy of doing what I'm doing is what makes me happy.
Mm.
that is very well said. Since we're on the topic on AI, how does it feel when AI is taking over? Like now you mentioned it, voice acting jobs and animators and etc. Like, does it frighten you? Like, does it get you like worried? Like, oh, I might lose my job over AI.
Partially, but also as I've been listening, I listen to a lot of podcasts these days, and I'm hearing actors replaced by AI. A lot of the big car commercials have replaced human actors with AI, and it doesn't sound great. Um, and what concerns me is that the folks who would normally be producing commercials with humans are settling for using artificial intelligence, and they think it sounds okay. It's
Mm,
the uncanny valley, if you're familiar with that branch of psychology. It's just slightly off, and it
yeah.
really makes your brain, assuming you're wired as a normal human, your brain says, something's not right about that. That's a little odd. That is slightly unsettling and off-putting. And I hear those, and I hear that the inflection is just wrong, and all the lines are going down at the same pace, and everything sounds very unnaturally red. And I'm thinking, that's not right. That's inhuman, literally. But the folks who are interested in, I guess, saving money think, it'll do, and they let it go.
Yeah,
Mm.
honestly, like just with AI in general, for me personally, I call it like fast food, like art or like just like shovelware. I guess because
Mhm.
like there's like no soul into like AI. Like for example, like music or like even voice acting, like we were talking about right now. Like you can tell like there's no like soul into it. That's the only thing I could like word it out right now. Like there's like no like yeah, like there's like no soul into it. I just feel like AI and like I guess the producers like or the people are using AI to I guess people are losing their jobs over. Like I just feel like just for a little uh quick grab of money, I guess. So I think that that really sucks.
It has its place. A lot of people are going to say, you hate AI. No, not true. I've become great friends to the extent that that's possible with Google Gemini. All my little trivia questions of life every day, I fire them off to Google Gemini. Google Gemini gives me an answer. And you can also have Google Gemini speak to you in the soulless, empty, artificial voice that it has with the repeating inflections, even though Google Gemini getting a little better than some of the AI commercials I've heard. But
Mhm.
for that sort of thing, my phone just heard me say the word schmoogle, which I'm not repeating. Um, but the perfect use of AI is for nonfiction narration like that. You don't need to hire an actor to tell me the difference between two types of spices that I'm asking Google Gemini about. The artificial voice will read it to me because I'm driving, and it's perfectly acceptable. But as far as commercials, which are supposed to be making you feel comfortable about buying a product you might otherwise not want to buy, you want to have that human connection. So yeah, it's getting to the point where it might replace us. I really hope it doesn't, not just for the sake of my fellow actors and me who will be painfully out of work, but
Mhm.
it's the dramatic arts, emphasis on the arts. And art is created by humans. We've all seen AI artwork with the mangled fingers. It's like, no, not human on so many levels. So, yeah, remember it's a tool and use the tool wisely.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's just better of, I guess, us humans doing like, I guess the art. Like I don't like every time listen to something or look at something, I want to see something like soulful, but not like soulless. You know, like I guess
Mhm.
AI beats off like the soul out of it. But that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. If anyone's career should be threatened, it should be reference librarians. Who, if you're of a certain age, you may not have ever dealt with a reference librarian, but there was a time back before computers where if you had esoteric questions and you couldn't find another answer, you'd go to the library and there'd be some probably ancient person of either gender, any gender at the time,
Mhm.
um, who knows exactly what book to get to find the answer to your question. But now, Google Gemini, I shouldn't say Schmoogle. Schmoogle Gemini is your reference librarian. So sorry, reference librarians of the world. Your days may be numbered.
Mm. So, what's your beef with librarians?
Librarians are fine people, but unfortunately, technology marches on. And technology may take over. Well, books are now online, so you don't really need the librarians to put things back on a shelf. So they're going the way of archaic things like button shoes. Google that. Hi, Google. Don't listen to me. I'm not talking to you. But nobody wears button shoes anymore. They did in Victorian times, but not anymore. So time marches on.
Mm-hmm. And
Mhm.
it made me laugh a little bit because there's this librarian. It's like a woman with like a full beard, in my town. So I just kind of
Okay.
chuckled when I heard the beef with librarians. But I get what you mean though. I have heard the term reference librarian. It was like the old Google per se, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure they still exist. I haven't dealt with one in a couple of decades because
Mm-hmm.
Schmoogle has existed. But yeah, if I were a reference librarian, I'm pretty sure I'd feel threatened by technology.
Right, right. So for my next question, uh, after researching your astonishing career, I noticed you did a voiceover at the end of a it was an anime called Lunatic Nights. It was the first episode.
Hmm.
It's a I don't know if you want to categorize it as a hentai just so the fans know, but uh, do you plan on voicing in any other shows like that in the future, or what exactly dictates what you can and cannot voice?
I can voice whatever the heck I want. I'm an
Mm,
independent contractor. I work for myself and I work for any client that's willing to hire me. It's a matter of morality and the pace of technology. Back in the day before the internet was the internet and was so all powerful and all searchable, doing the hentai-ish things of life were not as readily available. But now things get cataloged and are searchable, and people will stumble upon them. But back in the day when I was doing what would now be considered not safe for work, they couldn't voice themselves.
mm-hmm.
I am an actor eager to work, and if somebody wants to hire me, the thing about voicing in hentai is that we remain fully clothed.
That's good.
No
That's good.
bodily fluids are exchanged. It's acting. And, just as as films can be rated R and NC-17, is that any different than voicing in a hentai?
Have you ever watched the specific episode you starred in, or no?
Not that specific one. I've watched other ones, and again, I will say my part was good.
Mm-hmm.
You can decide which part I'm referring to. Thank you so much, kids. But I gave 100% in my performance because that's what the director wanted.
And I watched that episode just for the purpose of the interview, and it was rather interesting to say the least. I'm not disrespecting it by any means, but it's an interesting watch.
It's got its audience, and I hope the audience was, for lack of a better word, satisfied.
Mm.
Oh yeah, definitely satisfied.
All right then.
All
You're
right.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It was
Thank you.
really good film.
Thank you very much.
All right, Kevin, back to you.
Thank you. So, my next question for you, Mr. Pollock. Did you ever visit Hooters before?
Lots of times, both before and after I voiced for them. It's a fine establishment. It was great to be there.
What was your favorite part going to Hooters?
Of course, the Hooters girls. They're lovely. And none of them cared that I voiced their commercials, which is also lovely.
Did you ever tell the Hooters girl that you did a voiceover or I guess a commercial for Hooters?
I did. They didn't care.
That really sucks.
Hmm. Like I said before, you can't please everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the Sonic Forces promotional or did you visit Hooters when they had the Sonic Forces promotional thing going on?
Nope, that I didn't. I did not. I just voiced it when I visited when I was voicing, but the uh, the Forces promotion was only in Japan, so wasn't
Oh,
really accessible.
I see. I see.
Oh,
So,
and
or sorry, Kevin, go ahead. I apologize.
no, it's okay. Um, have you looked back on your Hooters voiceover or your commercial? Because when I was researching on the, I guess on the Hooters like thing, because I saw a tweet that says that who I guess who said Hooters, and he said I did, and it showed the link to I guess the Hooters commercial, but I couldn't find it.
I think
Did
it.
you?
I'm checking my YouTube playlist here. I believe I still have the Hooters playlist that I built with my stuff in. Let's see here, playlist. You all. Yeah, I've got two of them, and I think they're still available. Here's one of them.
Oh, really? Because I would love to watch the Hooters commercial voiced by you.
Sure. Let me send you this private playlist. Don't tell anyone I sent it.
Oh, no
Well,
Okay.
you
problem.
can just share it separately, but here's a link into the thing.
Oh,
See
certainly.
if it'll
Your
show
secret's
up
safe
here
with
in our
us.
chat.
My mouth is zipped up.
I just pressed the wrong button. Here now. Hang on, I've got to get back into this part of the chat. There we go. Pasting that. There you go. Enjoy that later.
Awesome, thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So, uh, for my next question, what was your favorite Sonic game to work on so far?
All of them.
Hmm.
Every single one of them. As I said, I love working. The, there was a slightly different vibe in the Sonic Boom games that everyone hates because we recorded ensemble style, like an episode of Sonic Boom, which hardly ever happens. So normally, if it's me and the director and the production team laughing and scratching and having a great time. But for the Boom games, it was the whole cast, at least virtually together. But we were together at the same time, laughing and scratching and having a great time.
And with
Mm.
I don't know why Boom got so much hate, to be honest. It was actually kind of an enjoyable game, in my opinion.
There were mixed opinions on the games. Most people liked the cartoon more than the games, which is fine. I don't judge the content. I love to be part of the content, and I love to give a memorable performance in the content. So, again, I'll say my part was good.
Yeah, I think it was more of like a comedic for the cartoon at least. It was more comedic. I mean, I find myself even grown watching it, still having a good laugh at it, just because
Mhm.
it's for all audiences. I don't feel like it's specifically for children or adults. I think anyone can enjoy it.
The cartoon was a classic sitcom in animated form, and we had a grand time recording it.
Mm, very interesting. All right, back to you, Kevin.
Oh, thank you. Um, for our next question for you, Mr. Pollock. Do you know do you know a guy named Chris Chan?
Mm, not particularly well. We met once at a convention, but I know of their existence.
How was he like when you, I guess, encounter him in the fan convention?
Quite personable in person, other issues in life notwithstanding, but quite cordial, quite pleasant in person.
Hmm. Are you aware of his I guess his comic series Sonic True?
Not in great detail, but I don't tend to follow a lot of fan stuff because I'm doing a lot of other stuff when I'm not working.
Hmm. So, I think on Twitter, I think he announced it, but I'm not sure. I could pull it up later. But I think he goes on the line. He says that he's trying to work on an animated series on Sonic True, and he was trying to get a, I guess, like contact on you, but he didn't know how. So, are you willing to go on? I guess, work on the animated series Sonic True Adventures for, I
Not
guess,
without violating a whole bunch of a whole bunch of contracts. I'm under contract with Sega, and whenever I forget that, they remind me. So no,
Do you think
Mm.
Sega should file a class action lawsuit against Chris Chan for copyright infringement?
that's between them and their lawyers. They might have every right to, but that's between them and their lawyers.
Mm.
Mm.
Are you aware of the Chris Chan controversy, like just in general, or do you just like you said earlier, not keep up on that sort of thing?
I'm on the same internet as everyone else for the most part. So yes, quite the troubled existence.
Mm,
Wish them the best of luck.
yeah,
Mm.
he was, or I don't want to use the wrong verbiage, but it's an interesting situation to say the least.
Very interesting.
The world is full of all sorts of people. Chris Chan is one of them.
That's very well put.
Thank you.
All right. Um, for my next question, what is your advice to the younger generation for a fulfilling life?
Don't screw it up. You
Mm,
only have one world. Don't break it. And don't spend your time hating.
do you feel as if the younger generation could make a comeback per se, like there will be like a whole revival of just common courtesy, or do you feel like it'll get worse as time progresses?
Based on what I've seen recently, it's not looking great. Um, the age of the slacker has has arisen and has arrived, and technology perhaps has made folks lazy and antisocial,
Mm.
and the world ain't like that. I mean, I spent enough years in office jobs dealing with people, and I learned a lot from dealing with people. But kids today seem not interested in working, not interested in working with people,
Mm-hmm.
not interested in driving. And okay, good luck.
Yeah, it seems like they have a whole expectation for everything to be given to them for minimum effort.
Yeah, it's the world of entitlement, the world of everyone gets a trophy. And I have kids of my own, and we try to avoid that situation whenever possible. But yeah, they quite literally they were in Little League and they got a trophy for showing up. Okay,
Mm.
congratulations.
Yeah, I always
Mm.
thought participation trophies were just it creates that expectation that you're gonna get something no matter what, and I think, in my opinion, as long as you play by the rules and you work hard, I think you deserve as much effort as you're gonna put into something. That's just how I
Yeah,
feel.
all God's children want attention, but they should probably get attention for the right reasons and not just because everyone gets their 15 minutes of attention.
Right.
So yeah,
Mhm.
life is hard, kids. Best of luck.
Very, very true.
Thank you.
All right. Back to you, Mr. Kevin.
Oh, thank you. Um, my next question for you, Mr. Pollock. Do you ever get mad when people prefer you only as Eggman, but not as, well, yourself, Mike Pollock?
Kind of dehumanizing. I am a real live flesh and blood human being. I'm in the theater. If you think of a live theater with a stage, there is on stage and off stage, and there's in front of the curtain and behind the curtain. When you're on stage performing, you're performing as a character. When you go off stage, you are back to being yourself. The show's over. The, everyone goes home and enjoys their life at home. When I am working and having a grand old time doing my job as an actor, the job that I love, the job that I've chosen. But
Mhm.
when we're in the studio, the director, the producer refer to us by our names because those are our names. They will occasionally, jokingly, or in the course of directing us, refer to us as the character name, but for a purpose. But when we are off stage, we're off stage. Now, this is how I approach things. Other actors may have different opinions, but in order to maintain what little sanity I may have left, I separate on stage and off stage because having worked in the theater on stage and off stage, when I step off stage and the curtain comes down, I'm back to being me. And a lot of people, especially at conventions, want to come up and role play and improv. When we are doing what we are doing, the reason it comes out so well is because there's a script in front of us. And our skill as actors is to read aloud without sounding like we're reading. But at least for me, if you have me improv as the character, it's not going to go well because that's not my skill set. There are skilled writers writing dialogue that I will lift off the page and read aloud, but we don't sit and role play as our characters generally when we're off stage.
Mm.
So as it's very just like being an animal at a zoo, which is quite literally dehumanized. Um, it's dehumanized to be thought of only as a character I play. It is flattering, but but don't maintain an entire conversation expecting me to be the character. There, I
Mm.
actually, it takes effort for me to get into character and do the voice. It's not
Mhm.
my normal speaking voice. There are some similarities, but the character voice is a lot louder.
Mhm.
There's a
Oh.
difference. It is a separate entity. And because it's me and I'm the one doing it, I understand that. And I understand how acting works. And I get that if you've never stepped on stage, as Kevin, you said you haven't, it may not be as second nature to you as it is to me. But just something to remember that when the actor's off stage, the actor's off stage. I think Jason Alexander put it best when somebody ran into him in an airport and wanted him to sign stuff and have an interactive moment. And Jason Alexander said, "I'm not here for you now," which may seem harsh, but we
Mm.
are we are public people, but we're still private people when we're not being public people.
Mhm.
So if you find us
Mm.
privately, we should be cordial and but don't expect us to stop everything and sign stuff. Some actors will and some celebrities will. I am wrangling my kids and my wife and I'm trying to balance their time with your time. So it's tough, especially when we're not doing a public appearance. When I'm at a table at a convention, that's why I'm there. Come and have an interaction. But remember,
Mhm.
I'm still a person. I'm not the character. It's me in my street clothes speaking normally. I'll give you free samples of a voice, but there's a reason why there's a there's a price list for custom videos. We're there to sell ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we charge for videos because that's part of our job. That was a very
Mm.
long-winded answer to a fairly short question, but
Oh,
I think I covered that pretty
No,
well.
no, I think that's a really well said answer,
Thank you.
honestly. And
And people, I'll add, people will have possibly a bad experience and say, Mike's mean. No, Mike's not mean. Mike did not meet your expectations, which might mean maybe adjust your expectations.
mm,
Hey, I'm going to meet Dr. Eggman. No, you're going to meet a guy who happens to sound like Dr. Eggman sometimes.
right.
Mhm.
Have you ever
For-
like uh is it always like kind of annoying to just like tell fans that like I'm not Eggman or
Annoying is the wrong word. Tedious and repetitive is probably a better word.
mm,
I tell people a lot, and again, it's an awkward moment, but and it's an awkward moment that often ends with "You're mean," but it's not meanness. Take a step back and think about it critically about how acting works.
right.
I'm honored that I inhabit a character so deeply that you can't separate the artist from the art. But I'm portraying a character. Sometimes in a show, I portray multiple characters. Who am I supposed to be when you meet me? Any one of those characters, perhaps. I don't know. But yeah, it's I remember how I was as a kid, but I remember watching cartoons and wanting to meet the actors that play the characters. I did not expect to meet the character. There was a guy at our local drugstore, some guy in a suit playing Spider-Man. Even at the tender age of 8 or 9 or whatever I was, I realized there was an actor in a suit. And when Spider-Man said, "You can call me Spidey," I didn't think, wow, Spider-Man said I could call him Spidey. The guy in the Spider-Man suit would like me to believe he's Spider-Man, says I can call him Spidey. Okay. Same thing walking around Disney with people in their professional fursuits. It's not actually the seven dwarves. There are people in the suits.
Mm-hmm.
And even the Snow Whites and the Cinderellas who are real life people in costumes. They're the character and portraying the character. Yes, we're all in on the joke. We suspend our disbelief. That's what theater is, suspending your disbelief. But when the show's over, your disbelief should come back. And
Mm-hmm.
and think of why you want to meet an actor. Do you want to meet an actor to meet an actor and talk about the craft of acting? Or do you want to talk to Dr. Eggman about his evil plans? I don't have those answers. That's scripted. And a lot of people are then going to say, I'm in a, boy, am I a rantic. That's not what they're going to say, but they might say that. A lot of people are going to say, oh, it's just a job. No, it's the job I love. But the job is acting. It's taking a script, sometimes rehearsing it, and delivering the dialogue that's on a page. I did an off-Broadway play last year, which involved a lot of memorization and costumes and wandering around the stage where I'm supposed to be. It's skills I haven't used lately, but even though it was me on stage, it was me on stage portraying a character. And when the show is over and you meet me backstage, when I come out half made up still, you're meeting Mike after the show. You're not meeting Jason, the character I was playing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mean to be Mr. Old Curmudgeon, though I might be, and having to dash children's hopes and dreams, but I'm also not one to patronize children. Here, kids, you want to know how acting works? I'm an actor. I'll tell you. I'm not the character. I'm not dressed like the character. I'm not made up as the character. And even if I was and you were meeting me in real life, dressed up in full costume as the character, I'm still an actor portraying a character.
Mm.
Mhm.
And while
I
we're on,
think I've covered that.
yeah, and I agree. I
Thank
think
you.
that people need to understand that, that people have their own separate lives or their own separate entities, and I feel like people just need to, understand that like you're portraying a character, not more or less, you are the character. I feel like that's where a lot of people they can't understand that, and I totally understand it. I don't think it's rude at all, or I
Let's draw a parallel as I interrupt you, which I am
no
rude for doing.
no worries.
You ever see your teacher in real life at a store?
Yes.
And it's weird,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
You think your
Mhm.
teacher lives at school. No, your teacher is a teacher during the day and goes home to a family, or at least a family of cats. Depends on your teacher. I don't know. I'm not judging. But your teacher, is the job. That's your teacher. But the teacher has a life, presumably, and it's not a life at school. You may run into your teacher somewhere in town with the teacher living their life off stage, as it were. Same thing.
Yeah, I remember one time running into one of my teachers, Mr. Gubru, and it was kind of an odd interaction because I've never seen, like, you forget like they exist outside of the realm of
Hmm.
professional. So it's kind of surreal, but I understand that comparison. That's a good comparison. But
Same thing.
Mhm.
Running into your doctor I ran into my kid's doctor at the gym. It's like, oh, doctor. Oh, I shouldn't say hi because you're the doctor. But yeah, there he was at the gym working out. Didn't expect that.
mm,
But I didn't
Mhm.
say, so listen, I've got this problem with my hip. No, we didn't. We weren't asking doctor questions.
right,
My
right.
cousin is my optometrist. I just saw him this past weekend for a wedding. Yes, I had an optical question that was a continuation of a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. I said, I forgot a question, but I didn't see him and say, look at my eye. Does this look inflamed to you? No, we didn't start the conversation like that.
Right, right.
But go on. You were saying.
Yeah, no,
I'm
no,
done now.
yeah, no problem, no problem.
Thank you.
While we're on the topic of interactions, how do you handle strange fan interactions? There's just a couple. I mean, there was one of that space where I don't want to get into too much detail, but it was it was someone doing an inappropriate act, a private act, if you will, and then there's this other guy that struck me as immature. He Matt Snails. He sent some weird Eggman picture. Just interactions like that. How do you handle like strange fan interactions?
Stupid and cheerful. You smile and nod. You're cheerful and complimentary. Don't let it get to you.
Mhm.
You can't control their behavior. You can possibly nudge them in the right direction, but as I said before, there are all kinds of people, and the weird people are some of them.
Very well put. All right, Kevin, back to you.
Thank you. Since we're on the topic of people sending, I guess, weird pictures of Eggman, um, are you aware there's Eggman Rule 34 on the internet? Because
Sure.
I saw it. I think, yeah, what he was talking about, the guy named Matt Snell sending you like a picture of Eggman Rule 34, and no, I
By
was something.
definition, Rule 34 states that Rule 34 should exist for everything. So, yes, by the definition of Rule 34, there will be Rule 34 Eggman. Okay. I don't own the character. I am honored to voice him at Sega's request. I don't
Mhm.
spend my 24 hours a day thinking about Eggman. If I've got auditions for other stuff, I've got recordings of gigs for other stuff. My life does not revolve around Eggman the way people think it does. And again, that's not a mean thing. I Before August 23rd, 2003, I was not cast as Dr. Eggman. There was a whole
Mhm.
35 years of my life that had no Dr. Eggman in it.
Yeah.
And even as it is now, Dr. Eggman is just one of the many characters I portray every year, and it is my joy to do so and a joy to portray all those characters. But I don't spend my life thinking about Dr. Eggman.
So it isn't just
Mhm.
so it's just you kind of let bygones be bygones. You don't ever look at something like that and you're like, "Oh, come on, man," or do you respect kind of the expression, even though how weird they might be? You just respect the expression of the character, I guess.
Once it leaves, Once it enters the internet, the world will have its way with it. That is not necessarily respectful of the character. As my name is on contract, respect the intellectual property of my clients because that's the understood part of the contract. We are hiring you to voice our characters, please treat them respectfully. So I do. And you don't have your name on the contract, so you're not bound either literally or figuratively by that concept. But I am, and I'm not the thought police. I'm not gonna say, don't do that. Well, I might say that, but I'm not a cop. It has no binding, no binding resolution. But the way you would treat the character versus the way I would treat the character are going to be different. And that's okay. But if you feel compelled to show someone potentially disturbing imagery, think about that. Think about your behavior. A little creepy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely odd when me and Kevin were just discussing about that. I mean, we sat there and just like we were in disbelief. It's just odd. It's just people who do that just are more than likely looking for attention that they don't get, and it's
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 to
odd.
expand on what I said otherwise. All God's children love attention. If they can't get it for doing something good, they'll get it by doing something bad. So
Mm-hmm.
there you go. There's your attention. Enjoy it.
Yeah, and as far as we saw, like that account actually is banned now. So I mean, it's hopefully they won't be creating other accounts to continue to harass people. But I mean, it's just one of those things. I suppose people have their free will, whether it be used for good or bad things. But
Hmm.
hopefully they'll learn.
Folks, folks send stuff all the time. I often ignore it
That's
because you
fair.
can.
Right. All right. Well, I'd say it's back to you, Kevin.
Thank you. Um, um, my question is, how was it being a senior producer for Global Programming in New York City?
I don't know because I'm not.
Oh, you weren't?
No.
Hmm.
Oh, classic internet spreading disinformation.
Because I was in it's a Mike website,
Mm.
and I looked at your resume, and one of the resumes says that you were a well, let me a a senior producer for, or you were back in the day. Who knows? For Paul Global Programming for New York City.
Oh, well,
So,
yeah, that was the radio syndication gig I worked on. It was a great gig while it lasted. We left on bad terms, so I tend not to think about it. I think about the good times. But
oh,
yeah, they kicked me to the curb. But for the time I was working, I did some good work. Wrote some comedy, wrote some song parodies, performed in some comedy bits, eventually regurgitated celebrity birthdays and the news of the day. And that's part of what got me fired. But no great loss. They're out of business now, or at least the department I was in.
Yeah, good riddance. Good
mm,
riddance. So,
indeed.
before we continue, Are you comfortable going a smidge bit longer? I know we initially talked about 30 minutes to an hour, but are we comfortable going to an hour and 30 minutes possibly?
Sure. I
All
got an
right.
audition to do when we're done, but I'll be awake enough to do that then.
All right. I appreciate your time. So, for my next question, and this is a bit of an odd question, but I have it written down. It's nothing too bad, but and you can obviously decline it if you wish, but
Sure.
so
Try me.
there's this thing. Our friend Tom had his first ever cheeseburger, and we were just wondering if you could say I had my first ever cheeseburger in Eggman voice, and you don't have to. It's just a question I thought I'd shoot out there.
Yeah, the way Sega's life with Sega is recently, probably not.
All right, no worries, no worries. I
Thank
just
you.
figured I'd ask, and I respect that. So let's
Thank
move
you.
on to our next question.
I appreciate your respect.
Yeah, no problem. Uh,
um, for my next question for you, Mr. Pollock, do you ever lie about being 6 foot, but in reality you're 5'11"?
Adults shrink as they age. So while I was once 6 foot, I'm probably now 5'11" and will soon be 5'10". But fortunately, I do voiceover work, so my height doesn't really enter into it.
Mm,
Mm.
I see. All right. So for my next question, uh, what's your advice for success in life?
Don't be a jerk. Unless somebody deserves being a jerk. They can be a jerk. But generally, don't be a jerk.
Very
If you're
well.
going to be a jerk, have a good reason.
That's fair. That's fair. I
Thank
think
you.
there's too much meanness in the world, and I definitely wish there was less of it. But I feel as if the internet progresses, the hatred will continue as it is left untreated, and people
As
are
as we were
unpunished.
as we were saying earlier, hatred for the sake of hatred, not cool. If you've got a reason for hatred, then hatred is a useful tool in the arsenal. But if you just hate because you've been taught to hate by generations before you, that's not really justification. If someone is, hating on you, you can hate them back, I suppose. If someone is doing a lousy job of, let's say, customer service, you can hate on them for being lousy at their job. As I age, I do that more often than I'd like to admit. But
Hmm.
incompetence can be annoying because if your job is customer service and you're not servicing the customer, then people are going to be unhappy with you. So again, be a jerk when there's a reason to be a jerk, but don't be obnoxiously jerky. Be jerky enough to get a resolution to your problem.
Mm.
It's a fine line and one I can often straddle.
Right. Right. All right. Back to you, Kevin.
Thank you. Um, my next question is, do you have any advice for any young up and coming voice actors? Like,
Start in the stage, get some community theater experience, get some school theater experience, because you're going to, when you walk into a booth for your first gig, the director will expect you to have some type of acting experience. And you may walk in with absolutely no preparation. You've not seen the script. You've not had a chance to rehearse anything. You've got to be able to do a cold read and sell it early on in the session so that the director is satisfied with you by the time you're done.
mhm.
Beyond that, it's a challenging career. Get used to rejection because 98% of what we deal with every day is rejection. I pump out auditions and most of them go nowhere. I'm delighted to say that the past couple of weeks, there have been a couple of commercial bookings, yay me. And there was a call back today that might lead to another booking, yay me. But other than that, I got more auditions to do when we're done. That may turn into nothing, but that's the nature of the business.
Hmm.
Do you feel like being a voice actor is hard nowadays, or was it easier back then?
There's a lot more competition thanks to the internet, as we've discussed earlier. Now, anybody with a microphone in their home, like I've got, becomes can compete as an actor. In the old days, you had to live in one of the big production centers in Los Angeles, in New York, in Dallas. But these days, you don't have to. You can do what we do pretty much anywhere, and that makes lots more competition for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So, for my last couple questions, these are from my good buddy Andrew, aka Crispy Boy.
Mm.
He just asked me. He's a huge fan of your work. I would probably say that he's a bigger Sonic fan than I would consider myself.
Oh
And
yeah, very.
so one of his questions was, how do you earn such an amazing last name? I'm assuming referring to Pollock, probably.
Sure, it came, I believe, from the immigration folks. One of those. Oh, you're from Poland. Well, now your name's Pollock. Welcome.
Mm.
So they slap on a new name in immigration, and I wear it with pride.
Oh, I see. So,
Mm.
so is your family from like Poland, assumingly?
Dad's side is Polish, mom's side is Russian, and they
Oh,
met somewhere in the
Mm.
middle.
very interesting.
Very interesting.
So, another one of these questions he asked is, do you think someone could obtain the Eggman mustache IRL?
Um, Naturally, it'll be a bit of a challenge. There'll be a lot of product involved, but with the aid of theatrical makeup, you bet you could probably buy one on the internet and get some latex or spirit gum and affix that proudly onto your upper lip.
I feel like that would be very difficult to grow out, and I feel like it would take years. I don't even think I could grow out a mustache like that.
There are mustache competitions internationally, and I'm going to bet if you scoured through the photo gallery, you would probably find a prime example of something similar.
Well, that's neat. I didn't know people had mustache competitions.
Hmm.
It's rather interesting.
And they will sculpt their mustache and beard into all manner of crazy shapes. It's fantastic.
hmm.
Hmm.
So, another one of the questions he asked, and there's only three more. There's not too many, but out of all the characters you voiced throughout your career, which one was your favorite?
I tend not to play favorites because my favorite role will always be the next one. As I said before, I love doing what I do. So when I'm performing whatever character I'm performing, that is my favorite because I'm there to give the producer and director my all. So I am focused on performing that character to the best of my ability and having a blast doing it, even if it's a boring corporate narration. That's why I'm there. They hired me because I can make their boring script sound interesting. That's the challenge, and I rise to that challenge whenever possible. So I love all of them equally. All of
Oh,
them were tons of fun to record.
that's a good way to look at that sort of thing. It's good to give your all and to not, like you said, pick favorites because at that point, everything should be your favorite.
Sure.
Mm.
Like I said, I love doing what I do. This brings me great joy.
Do without getting too personal or anything like that. So you mentioned so you're based out of New York, right? Or at
Hmm.
least city. Does someone who is in the voice acting industry, are they able to make like a decent living in like while living in New York City? Like, is the amount of money you would get from that sort of thing worth it? Do you think?
In the age of remote recording, it's a lot easier. All the stuff I do with Sega, for the most part, is done remotely. I stay here and we connect digitally over the internet, and they're in LA, and we record together but separately. Um, it it's probably easier to live in LA because then all the LA people know you that much better. But for the sake of a lifestyle, I'm not an LA person. I'm a New Yorker through and through, and either LA or I would kill the other, and that wouldn't be any good. So, yeah, keeping a respectable distance works very well for me, and I can work. The wonderful thing about remote is it doesn't matter where the client is. I worked with a guy from Canada the other day. I worked with people from somewhere around the country for a previous session. So, yes, as in the words of Rush Limbaugh, who's probably not great to be quoting these days with the world the way it is, but I was his local board operator when I worked in the radio in Syracuse. As long as I'm here, it really doesn't matter where here is. So
Mm.
I've I've got a microphone, an interface, and high speed broadband connection. I can be anywhere virtually.
Hmm.
Mm.
So, while we're on kind of the and I while we're on kind of that topic of like so you said you worked for or with Rush Limbaugh?
I was his local producer. He was a network show, so he went out to radio stations around the country. So I was in the guy running the local board, the control board, putting the commercials where they belonged when it aired locally on a 1 hour tape delay, as I recall. Yeah, we would record the hours and play it back an hour later. So I would stop and start the tape, record at the right time, and put the commercials in where they belonged. And I met him at least once when he yeah, I visited his New York studio once, and I said, "Hey, I'm your local board op. Hey, it's great to meet you, guys." And that was the extent of that.
Mm.
Mm.
So, Another question I have would be, what are your thoughts on the Honda Odyssey? Do you think it's a very reliable car that everyone should use?
If I was hired to voice their commercial, I sure would. Beyond that, I've had no firsthand experience.
Mm.
Mm.
All right. Back to you, Kevin.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So I noticed that you have your own very SoundCloud account. Do you publish music on your SoundCloud? And does that make you a SoundCloud artist?
I published some of the song parodies that I wrote when I was working for the radio syndication company. Some of them were the original recordings, some were re-sings by me. And these days, when the mood strikes me, and I'll write a song parody and perform it. But it's not on the front burner. It's purely as needed and as the mood strikes. So I wouldn't consider myself a SoundCloud artist. The reason I got a account is one of the casting sites I was on needed to have your voiceover demos somewhere in the cloud that you can link to, and they recommended SoundCloud. So I went to SoundCloud and said, okay. So you'll notice my demos are the oldest things there, and then the other
Mhm.
stuff it filled up the space as needed. Oh, here's some audio. I should post it somewhere. So that's where some audio went.
Mm.
Mm.
So,
So,
or go ahead, Kevin. I apologize. That's
oh, that's cool. Um, so one of your audios, I believe you were talking to, I guess, a scammer. So how
Hmm.
was that? Were you actually talking to an actual scammer and just pranking on them, or was it just all in an
Yep,
act?
those are completely genuine. That's the only improv I do. And if a scammer is dopey enough to either call while I happen to be recording, or they send an email with a phone number, and I feel like having some fun, I'll play.
So
mm.
what was the scammer exactly trying to do? Like, was he trying to sell you something or try to like, I don't know, I guess make you click a link or something?
Yeah, they usually try to gain remote access to my computer. I'm not that stupid.
Um, do you always get like emails like people trying to like access to your computer?
Oh, you bet my scam folder is never empty.
Mm.
Mm.
Um, so it's just kind of filled with just whatever scammy, malicious like links you could probably imagine.
Sure. And some of them are the fake tech support ones, and those often have phone numbers to call uh, to some foreign land, and sometimes I'll call them.
Mm, very interesting. Um, so how long have you been in New York or New York City?
Uh, Various parts of the region all my life.
Oh,
Grew up on Long Island, spent some time in Syracuse and Rochester, New York, then back to Manhattan, and now out in the suburbs. So
oh,
I've
I,
never been far from the tri-state area.
I get you.
Mm.
So, just kind of to commemorate the 23rd anniversary. Uh, I guess were you in the city of New York when September 11th occurred?
We're actually at our vacation home in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania, watching it on TV. But we came home the night before, or the night after, into Manhattan, and we were immediately hit by the smell of 9/11, which sticks with you.
Oh, was your place of residence at the time in was that near the Twin Towers?
We were in northern Manhattan, but I ended up having work in lower Manhattan, which that studio was displaced, and I didn't get too close to the ground zero area in the following weeks, but you didn't need to. Even way up in northern Manhattan, up at the George Washington Bridge, the smell was there, and that did not leave.
How long did
Mm.
the smell linger for?
Couple weeks.
Oh, do you think the way George Bush handled that, without getting too political, do you think he handled it as best as a person could?
Yeah, it was an unprecedented moment, and there's not really a playbook for that. But yeah, he handled it as best he could.
Mm,
It's but the
Mm.
scars remain.
I see. So have you visited the site at any point, like
I've
after?
I've driven past it. There was an audition facility that was down in Ground Zero area many years later. So I'd pass by the memorial on the bus ride down or back, and I would see the memorial. Uh, I went shortly is the wrong word. A few months after the incident, some friends came by to visit, and I showed them the area, not really touristy, but just this is what you want to see. There it is. Okay, we're done now. Keep moving. But yeah, but just passing by the area because the area has returned to its former vibrancy, and the memorial is there, and you can see the reflecting pools. So when I have reason to be in the area for business, that's where I'd be.
Mm,
Mhm.
very interesting. Kevin, do you have any other questions for Mr. Pollock?
Oh, I certainly do. Um, my question for you, do you think, since I'm related to, Charles Martinet, right? The voice actor of
Hmm.
Mario.
Sure.
So since he retired like a couple months ago, do you see yourself retiring anytime soon?
Not as long as my voice works. As long as people will hire me. I love
Mm.
working, and the body is still strong. The voice is still strong. So there is no official retirement age. So I will work as long as people are willing to hire me.
Mm.
Mhm.
Um,
And so I'm not sure if you're, I guess, allowed to talk about it. I think this will be like the last question, but I'm like want to know out of curiosity. Like, do you think like being a voice actor now today is like you can like I guess be how can I say it? Like you can make a living out of it. Like now today, like I guess today's society or whatever. Like you think it's possible to live by as a voice actor?
That's the thing about this business is it's completely unpredictable. If you book a big gig with lots of recurring episodes or a big union commercial with lots of residuals, yeah, you can make a living. Most actors, however, are struggling actors because you never know where you'll be working day to day. My commercial gigs were great the past couple of days, but those are done except for the paychecks, and they will pay and then they will stop paying. And I am only as good as my next audition, which is why I'm constantly auditioning and looking for work. So that's the downside of the gig. The work is looking for work. The actual working is the play, and that's when we get to play. But the constant search for work, while exhausting, is the nature of the business. My agents send me auditions, I submit them, and we hope for the best.
so, uh, do you foresee the economy, like just in general? And I know you said the business is very unpredictable, but so is the economy. Like, do you foresee the economy getting any better than what it is?
If I knew that, I wouldn't be doing this for a living.
Very well.
I would be an economist. Depends on the economist you listen to. Some say things look great, some say things look not so great.
In your experience, though, would you say that you have definitely like had an advantage in under this administration to be more specific, or do you think it's more or less the same?
It's more or less the same.
So,
Again, the administration doesn't help me get work. Successful auditions help me get work, and that's luck of the draw.
so you wouldn't.
Somebody has to like your audition. And that's how I live.
So you don't
Mm.
necessarily let like the whole vote Trump or vote Kamala like kind of dictate what you do in life per se.
No, when I was doing political commercials, which I try to avoid now because the world is the dangerous place,
Mm.
I would voice I would be a voice of the candidate that would select me. Um, if back when it was safe to voice spots for either party, I would voice spots for either party because they can't. Again, as I've said before, they can't voice themselves. Now, in the days of AI, maybe they can, but beyond that, I stay out of politics.
Mm.
While other opinions of recent political events online may differ, they're not politically based. My
So,
opinions are based on my upbringing and my heritage.
what have you ever done like a political advertisement for like a presidential candidate in like the early days of your career?
No, I've done a lot of local politicians though, local races.
Oh, so you can never see yourself like doing one of those aggressive Trump commercials?
I'll never say never.
Oh,
If they dangle a big check, I just might. But I'm not one to speculate. It's bad luck to speculate.
I think it would be
Mm.
quite enjoyable to hear that. I think
Mhm.
I just think you're very talented, and I think it I don't know, like you get what I mean. It would be a curveball, it'd get people's attention. I think it'd be smart, but like you said, depending on how big the check is, I mean, I wouldn't
Mhm.
deny it personally if I was given that opportunity. But um, while we're on the that sort of speaking, not the political, but just kind of the choices, I kind of want to end off the interview with more of a deep question. Are there any regrets you've made in your career? Do you think?
Not starting sooner. I started doing this more or less full time when I was about 35. There were probably 15 or 20 years that I could have been laying the groundwork for this career earlier than that. But I chose radio, and radio seemed like a good idea at the time. But radio was, as it turned out, a fairly dead end position. This turned into a very open ended position because it's all this audition, this booking, this audition, this booking. And I regret not starting this earlier, maybe starting in LA earlier, and life would have changed. Both have a very different family life. Who knows? But yeah, I should have started this whole thing earlier than I did. But I'm glad I started it eventually. Better late than never.
Mm,
Mm.
very interesting, and I feel like too, it's like whenever people are asked kind of that question of like regret, it's more like personally, if I were, at my peak, so to speak, I would I don't know if I think that people should live with regret, because if certain sequences of events wouldn't have happened, I mean, people wouldn't be where they are today, and I think a lot of that builds character, at least in my opinion.
Sure, it's the path is what it is. If I had not been in the right place at the right time, I would never have gotten in with 4 kids. I would never have had an audition for Dr. Eggman. I would not have been voicing Dr. Eggman for all these years. So, being in the right place at the right time.
Right.
Had I started earlier, I might not have ended in that same place. I might not have been. I might not have been involved with 4 kids. I might not have gotten the audition for Dr. Eggman. So, life works out the way it works out.
Mm,
Mm.
very true. Well, I think that concludes the interview, and I would once again like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to deal with us for an hour and a half. I really appreciate that.
Certainly, my pleasure. I have just enough time and enough energy to get this audition done before 10 a.m. when they need it. So.
All right, awesome.
That's
Well,
the next task on the list.
all right. Well, thank you for appearing on the Dylan Show.
Certainly. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Kevin. My pleasure.